We don't have to be right to be loved. That is something that I need to hear more than once in any given day. Because my goodness, it's so easy to think that being right is equivalent to being accepted, to being a part of God's kingdom. I mean, I've spent a good portion of my life now, over 50%, studying intensely the Word of God. And there's a part of my desire is that I want to make sure that I'm right. Like, I take very seriously the passage in James where it talks about how teachers, you should be careful to be a teacher because they'll be judged more harshly. I mean, as you can even see from the backdrop, there's a couple of books that I've been navigating through and wrestling with because I desire to be right. Sure. I mean, also it's a part of my desire to be close to the Lord, to worship Him through studying Him. But there's also a deep down part of me that I have to check myself and I wrestle with, that I desire to be right because I believe that to be right is to belong. But that's not true. For you don't have to be right in order to be loved, in order to be a part of the group, in order to be valued by Jesus. The passage I'm reflecting on today is Matthew chapter 16. It's that infamous passage where Jesus asks the powerful question, "Who do people say that I am?" And the disciples begin throwing out all the different options. Some say, you're a prophet. Some say you're Elijah. Others say Jeremiah. And Jesus says, all right. But who do you say that I am? Verse 16, Simon Peter answered, "You are the Christ, the Son of the living God." What an amazing moment. I mean, we call this the Great Confession because in the middle of the chaos, in the middle of this gospel, in the middle of what ultimately will be the road to Jesus' execution, Simon got it right. Simon said it right. And it's something that has become so valuable for the church that we put it in baptismal services, that we put it as a marker indicating who was a part of the family. Do you believe that Jesus is the Christ, the Son of the living God? Here's what's amazing to me. Even though Peter said the right words, he had no idea who Jesus was. He was still wrong. Well, where do I get that? I mean, you know how this story develops, right? I mean, in verses 17 through 19, Jesus is so excited. He's like, "Blessed are you, Simon, son of Jonah, for this was not revealed to you by flesh and blood, but by the Father in heaven. And I tell you, you're no longer Peter, or that you are Peter. You're no longer Simon. You are now Peter. And on this rock, I will build my church, and the gates of Hades will not overcome it. I will give you the keys to the kingdom of heaven." I mean, Jesus is excited. But Jesus knows what happens down in verse 22. Because in verses 20 and 21, Jesus begins to explain what it means for him to be the Messiah, for him to be the Christ. Verse 21, Jesus began to explain to his disciples that he must go to Jerusalem and suffer many things at the hands of the elders, the chief priests, and the teachers of the law, and that he must be killed and on the third day be raised to life. And then comes verse 22. And Peter took Jesus aside and began to rebuke him. "Never, Lord. This shall never happen to you, for you are the Christ, the Son of the living God. You are not to be taken captive. You are the one going to be taking people captive." Peter was so wrong. In verse 23, Jesus turns to Peter and says, "Get behind me, Satan. You are a stumbling block to me. You do not have in mind the concerns of God, but merely human concerns." This is what is so powerful to me in this passage. When Peter said the word, "You are the Christ," he didn't even understand what he was confessing. He had a picture of the Messiah that was far different than the picture of Jesus. And yet, even though he was wrong, he was still loved. Even though that he did not fully even understand the words that he was saying, he was still a part of the in crowd. He was still one of Jesus' disciples. He still received the keys to the kingdom. Here's why this passage is so encouraging to me. You don't have to be right in order to be loved. You don't even have to completely understand all of that, who God is, all that he desires in order to be a part of his disciples, in order to be a part of his family. Now listen, the goal is not to be ignorant, but the goal is not to solve the mystery of the infinite God as if our finite minds can conquer him by knowing his eternalness. For there are many things right now that we are proclaiming, or that we have proclaimed in the past, that were simply just not true. But ultimately, being right isn't the point. It's to embrace the fact that we are loved by an infinite God, by a sovereign King, by one that has no boundaries and has no limits and yet longs to embrace us. This week, I want you to wrestle with this idea. How often do you celebrate being right more than you celebrate being loved? And in that sacred space, in that wrestling, ask the Lord to break down your arrogance of intellect and replace it with the grace of his Son, the Messiah, the Son of the living God. I love you guys. Have a good week.